Hello, it's Ren Presents time. I'm your host, Ren, and today we continue with the Shadow Tech Goddess Part 2, Chapter 3, Hannah-Ben Shurlamp. So last week, we concluded our battle with the foul-mouthed member of the Order of Lacerta. They shoot her with a deathlock. They break her little vuncula. They cover her with webs, and they light her ass on fire. And apparently it didn't do any good because she just teleported out of the area and disappeared, along with her Galvatar handbag, which is another of those crazy Los Capricos weapons. And you know the watch fob she used a couple readings ago? It's a Los Capricos weapon too, and I have no idea which one. I can't not remember. I don't say anywhere in the book which one it is. I'd have to go through my own glossary and find it, but I'm not going to do that just right now. Stenstrom, shaken, seeing Gwen apparently dead on the ground, finds his feelings for her rekindled, realizes she is his soulmate, and then proposes to her, gives her a platinum watch that he bought for her sometime before. She accepts, and then Aram and Alesta show they find out their next destination to recover the crazy antimatter is this place called the Shrine of Boraster, a place that's mythical, sort of like Lemuria or Atlantis, a place that's spoken of in mythology, but not necessarily considered to be a real place. And they discover that, according to Grand Dame Hannah-Ben Shurlamp, EVOR, if this shrine actually does exist, it's on the old planet Ing. But problem, Ing, which was the previous homeworld of the League 100,000 years earlier, no one knows where Ing is. Stellar positioning was lost. If you think about it, how quickly information goes from readily available to lost, and we're talking just a few decades, how in a few decades what was once commonly known is forgotten, and we're talking 100,000 years, century after century. So you'd think in a computerized database or computerized society they would have that in a database someplace, but apparently not. So Ing and the Shrine of Boraster is position unknown at this time, and then they hatched up a plan. Hannah-Ben Shurlamp appears to be some sort of authority on Ing and maybe the Shrine of Boraster, so maybe they will just ask her in the morning, prod her with a few questions, get a few answers, and go from there. And this part of the book, I just love talking and thinking about lost mythical places like Atlantis and Lemuria and things like that. Alexander's tomb, places that might exist, probably maybe in some cases do exist, but we don't know where they are. I love to think about, what's happening in these places and those dark, untrodden passes, just holding their breath, waiting for someone to discover them afresh. Obviously, I live a pretty sedate life if I'm thinking about these things on a regular basis. But I just love it, and that comes through here in this book, where we investigate the Shrine of Boraster and where it is and what it was once used for and how to get to it. Things like that. I just love it. Great surprise. Reprising her role as Hannah-Ben Shurlamp, EVOR, is my great friend from across the pond, Cas Peace, a brilliant writer and a brilliant speaker as well. She read Hannah-Ben Shurlamp's lines in the Cat book, and she's back to do it again in this one, and I couldn't be more ecstatic. Cas Peace is an incredible writer. I will include a link to her various works, her Artisans of Albia series, The Circle of Conspiracy, The Masters of Malice, all great fantasy fare, superbly told. And I'm not using hyperbole or saying that just because Cas is really good. She's here with us today, and we will enjoy her contributions as the story goes forward. So let's not pussyfoot around any longer. Part 2, Chapter 3, Hannah-Ben Shurlamp. Let's proceed immediately. First thing in the morning, Stenstrom and Gwendolyn got up and looked for Aram and Alesta. As promised, they were gone, missing from the ship. Not surprising, yet a bit disappointing. They then had breakfast with Tara, who chattered on about nothing for the whole meal. They attended to their various duties and then reconvened in the conference room to contact Professor Shurlamp. It took a great deal of doing, Gwendolyn performing most of the work, to maneuver through the bewildering avenues of data and reach her sprawling data temple. Gwendolyn knew a little about hacking a database, however, Professor Shurlamp's was devilishly complex and well beyond Gwen's means to crack it. Oh, look at this. She's charging a fee to get out of the public levels of her data temple, Belle, Gwendolyn said with dismay. We're not going to get anywhere unless we pay. How much? Gwendolyn gasped. 7,000 Solaris. Is this woman insane? Stenstrom shrugged. Fine, we'll pay it. 7,000 Solaris? I say we jack out and consult a library or simply wait for this other you to gather the data. All I know is that this other you better have another version of me there at your side. Well, who knows how long that'll take, Gwen. Let's do it. If this professor has any useful information, it'll be worth it. She reluctantly uploaded money from the ship's stores and got into the higher levels of the data temple where the hollow flashes, real people lined into the professor's temple, resided in a room full of data. She got routed from one hollow flash to the next, answering an endless retinue of questions. No, I don't have an appointment, she shouted over and over. Please hold, was the dry response, and Gwendolyn stewed as they waited. I have little patience for HoloNet nonsense, she said. Nor do I, that's why I'm letting you do it. Eventually, after a lengthy wait, the holoscreen switched to a somber header advising their connection to EVOR. Hannah-Ben Shurlamp would begin within a minute, and to have all necessary materials ready. A connection opened to a vast office filled with wonderful Baroque furnishings and padded silk walls of stately red. Sitting at a Dragon Ball desk of dark cherry wood was a slender woman. She wore a frothy white gown of lacy complexity. Her arms, hands, and delicate face were powdered a stunning shade of white, and she wore a towering wig of tight curls. Dancing around her head in a steady orbit was a dizzying array of holoscreens, blasting out images, data, reports, codes, charts, and graphs. She held a wand-like control glyph in her slender hand, flicking it here and there. She spoke with a steady, cultured accent.
Paymaster Stenstrom, captain of the fleet privateer Seeker, 3rd Wing. Greetings. I am Hannah-Ben Shurlamp, EVOR. I believe congratulations are in order.
For what, Professor?
For your engagement.
Both Stenstrom and Gwendolyn puzzled over how she could have known about that, since it was only hours old. Then Gwen recalled the watch sitting on her wrist, an obscure giveaway. Hannah-Ben Shurlamp had a fast eye for detail and a fertile head for putting together connections. Before Stenstrom could answer, she spoke again.
I will advise you to make haste. Your initial fee is not unlimited, and my time is short.
Thank you, he replied. I have a question pertaining to the Elder Boraster. I'm told you are the premier authority on the subject. She nodded.
I have written a number of well-received treatments regarding the Elder Boraster. They are all published and a matter of public domain. I will thank you to carefully study them.
Stenstrom went on. Specifically, we seek information regarding a certain shrine or temple ascribed to him, the Shrine of Boraster.
And why, sir? Does a place not seen by elder eyes in over 100,000 years interest the likes of you, if it exists at all?
My reasoning is my own, madam. She shrugged.
I see. Here is some public knowledge for you. In days long past, Boraster was the chief of all elders in various matters. He himself brought the Hetathi of old to Cana from parts unknown. He had hoped to interbreed our two species and create a heartier, larger elder kind. Now then, this particular shrine was built by the sisters in tribute to Boraster 257,000 years ago. A demon is said to live there, and there is also the persistent story of a trapped woman, a goddess, requiring rescue. A fanciful story that has survived the centuries.
We understand the shrine is possibly located on the planet Ing, and...
Not possibly, sir. If it exists, it is located on Eng. There can be no doubt. Now, my question to you is why? Why ask such a thing? The pair of you are no scholars. You are privateers. What profit is in it?
Stenstrom and Gwendolyn sat there and felt interrogated. We need to go there, and we need some idea where on Ing it might be located.
Go there? To Eng? Eng's stellar positioning is unknown.
We might have some information, Stenstrom proffered. That seemed to get the professor's full attention. She moved the floating hollow screens aside with a flick of her glyph and stared hard at them. While she at first appeared to be a white seraph, on second glance, hints of raven danced all about her. Her pool-like eyes were deep brown, and her skin under the powder appeared olive in hue. From beneath her wig, tendrils of coal-dark hair lay on her shoulders.
Information? On Eng? Tell me the information.
We are performing research, nothing more, Gwen said, jumping in before Stenstrom could answer. It is a passing hobby of mine.
A hobby? You previously said you had information regarding Eng's stellar positioning. Now you say you are merely performing research to satisfy a hobby, of which you paid 7,000 solaris to entertain? So, which is it to be? Tell me the information, and I will attest to its merits or point out its shortcomings. What do you know?
We paid to ask you questions, Professor, not the other way around, Gwendolyn said.
Well then, here, I have refunded your solaris, plus a little extra as payment for your time. My interest in this matter comes not necessarily for the shrine, and its charming stories of demons and dames in need of rescue, but for Eng itself. Eng's stellar positioning is lost to the ages, and has been a topic of great scholarly debate for some time. To the scholar who can rediscover it will come recognition and accolades, which are very important to a person such as myself, but would mean little to a pair of spacefarers such as you. No insult intended. After all, what are scholarly dreams but just that? Being spacefarers, perhaps you've heard something in your travels, some rumour or piece of gossip, in Zaphan space maybe, where you ply your privateering trade. Starfaring vessels are a treasure trove of information. Therefore, any you might have would be of great interest to me, and I would be happy to pay for such assistance.
Professor, give us a moment, please, Gwen asked.
Of course.
Gwen muted the comm and disabled the screen. What should we do, Belle? I don't know if I trust this woman. She just spelled out her intentions. All she wants to do is take credit for rediscovering Ing. If she'll help us find the shrine, then so much the better. At least she'll be motivated. The door to the conference room opened, and Aram and Alesta rushed in. You're back, Stenstrom said. Aram was a bit out of breath. We are. Oh, some of the things we've seen. Did I win? Stenstrom asked. Was I successful? Oh, yes. We have new information, Belle, and we're glad that we caught you, Alesta said. First, Did you attempt to contact Professor Shurlamp? We did, and in fact she's on the comm even as we speak. Aram and Alesta gave a start. Don't worry, she's muted and the screen's disabled. Did you tell her much? Not really. We have the information as we promised. You did succeed, Belle, but we made a bad mistake previously. We thought that the name Messalina on our disc referred to the Lacerta you encountered in Caroline. It seemed only natural, but we were wrong. Aram jumped in. Were we ever? Listen, Messalina is actually a code name. In the Hertogs, Messalina is a name referring to none other than Hannah-Ben Shurlamp, EVOR, herself. In this reality, she is your main enemy, Belle. And how so? Gwendolyn asked. She's just a professor sitting in a room of padded silk paper watching her trades go spinning by. What's she gonna do? Egghead us to death? Gwen, this professor, she's into everything, and she's pulling all the strings. The Lacerta with Rodrigo, she was actually working for Professor Shurlamp the whole time. But why? A slight noise came from the comm. All eyes turned to the monitor. The screen was back on, and the mute feature had been disabled. Somehow, Hannah-Ben Shurlamp had done it from remote. She had heard every word they had just said. She spoke.
Burgon does happen upon interesting finds every so often. As I said, rediscovering the location of Eng is quite important to me. Rodrigo of Burgon was said to have access to information on the subject, and so my paid associate keeping tabs on him. And, in fact, she mentioned your name. You said you had additional information. What is it? Whomever you are working for, be it known, I am an interested buyer, and will better their offer plus 1,000 Solaris. I am here now, and I am willing to bid sight unseen.
Belle! Alesta cried. Gwendolyn tried to cut the comm link, but it would not go out.
2,000 Solaris, then,
Hannah-Ben said. Aram ran to the comm monitor and pulled the cabling from the wall.
10,000 Sol,
came her voice as the connection faded. Good creation, Belle. We're sorry we didn't get here sooner, Aram cried. The overhead shipboard comm crackled to life. The smooth, accented voice of Hannah-Ben Shurlamp rained down on them.
25,000 Solaris. That is my top offer. Understand, Paymaster, you do not want me as an enemy. You would do much better with me as your benefactor, your ally. I can assure you of that.
Gwendolyn killed the connection. Come, Alesta cried. Let's away from here where we may speak in peace. Immediately the comm buzzed, demanding to be answered. Let's go, Aram said as they exited the room. As they left, the comm buzzed relentlessly after them down the hallway. They treaded the well-lit splendor of the upper reaches of the ship, for the chilly, pitch-dark hold at the bottom where the Marians lived, shielded from power and technology, as was their way. Stenstrom, having become fond of the Pilgrims of Marian after the Drury incident, gave them a spacious hold and a good part of Deck 10 to do with as they would. Using mismatched and donated materials, they created a primitive world in miniature. Alesta allowed them in and lit a candle. In the flickering orange light, she led them through the zigzag of makeshift wooden structures the Marians had built to her small room in a wooden dormitory in the center of the hold, immediately adjacent to a barn full of cows. Here in this technology-free soak, there seemed no way Professor Shurlamp could get to them. They pulled up chairs as Aram built a fire in the small grate. Alesta's room was quite plain, just a few chairs, a spindle, a closet full of Marian clothes, and a bed with a nightstand. A picture of Aram sat on her nightstand. Gwendolyn sat down next to Stenstrom and took his hand. I'm not certain what all this fuss is. Professor Shurlamp is just that, a professor. How dangerous can she possibly be? Alesta allowed Aram to seat her, then she adjusted her robes. Her role, from what we've seen, is rather changeable. She can be a great help and a valuable ally, or she is a very dangerous and ruthless foe. I think she's a Bloodstein by birth. Gwendolyn sighed. Oh dear, not another Vith lunatic. Her brilliance has never been called into question. It's her methods that have people in the learned circles talking. She's been accused of stealing other people's work and taking credit for them. They say she has money all over the place, in the ex-commons, the science ministry, even the fleet, and she employs an army of thugs to carry out her bidding. We've also heard she'll step on anybody who gets in her way, and something like this, the rediscovery of one of our former homeworlds, is a right prize for a scholar. If she thinks the information like that is to be had, then she will not rest. None of this is proved, Aram said, and it sounds a little ridiculous to me, actually. It seems her only interest in this matter lies with the credit-taking for the rediscovery of Ing. Why don't we simply give her what we know and eliminate her from the proceedings? Stenstrom asked. Gwendolyn answered, Because, Belle, we are going to rediscover Ing, not her. Come again? The professor said it herself. The quest to rediscover Ing has been a key topic of scholarly debate for centuries. I recall attending several lectures on the subject when I attended the University of Arden, and the topic became a passing hobby of mine. Though the subject is simply a matter of scholarly prestige, I think that prestige should be ours. We'll prove Ing's location. It would be a great piece of notoriety for our house, something we can hang our hat on. I appreciate your enthusiasm, Gwen, but if we can appease the professor, it will be one less thing to worry about. I honestly can't fathom how a powdered, wig-wearing professor sitting behind her desk in Calvert could be any nuisance going forward. Now that we know of her interests, we'll simply keep her out of the loop. She obviously has various technological tricks to force her way into our comm system. I've seen such a thing before. I'll change the codes immediately, and that will be the end of her. Gwen, are you certain? Alesta asked. What about the Lacerda and her employee? What about her? I shan't think we'll see her again. Now let us speak no more of this boorish woman. Our first clear task is to locate Ing. What information do you have, Alesta? Well, according to our source, and thanks to Belle's efforts in another reality, the Grand Abbess of Magravine knew where Ing was. She recorded its location. The Grand Abbess of Magravine? Stenstrom repeated with a bit of shock. You mean the Black Abbess? The leader of the Black Hats? Is that what you meant to say? She eventually became the Black Abbess, yes, Alesta said quietly. Aram jumped in. But before that, before the Black Abbess, she was said to have kept lore alive regarding the location of Ing at her old temple at Magravine. And I figured this out in another universe? Stenstrom asked. You did. You fought hard for the information. Well, perhaps somebody should have knocked me upside the head. Gwendolyn's fertile mind was beginning to percolate. Magravine was destroyed ages ago by the Vith. There's nothing left of it but a crack in the ground. My University of Arden performed an extensive series of excavation there some years back, and I recall attending a display where many of the artifacts and collected materials from Magravine were publicly presented for viewing. It was quite fascinating. If the location of Ing had been discovered at Magravine, then that would have caused a sensation. Alesta agreed. It would have, yes. However, there are things at work at Magravine that have escaped scholarly notice. There is much there yet to be discovered, and danger is there as well. How so? Gwendolyn asked, skeptical. We've learned there is a grand animalium located at Magravine. A what? Stenstrom asked. A grand animalium, Alesta said. The elders made an extensive collection of various wild DNA as our ancestors traveled with them across the cosmos in ages past. This goes back nearly 500,000 years, starting at mythical Earth, where we all supposedly came from. Then, through the epochs of time, we traveled across the cosmos with the elders to forgotten Lemuria, to Emira of the Golden Light, to Camera, where we were made young and healthy, to Ing, where the elders began to fade, and then to Cana, where we are now. Through our travels, the elders collected a complete sample of local flora and fauna and saved them in stasis in a vast library. When we arrived here at Cana 100,000 years ago at the beginning of the EX time epoch, the planet was bare of native life. It's as if it had been scoured away. The sisters now believe that the Kestrels, who occupied the planet at the time, had wiped it clean except for the Monoма peoples to the south, leaving us a largely empty yet fruitful world. Seeing the planet so bereft of life, the elders created several automated stations and buried them deep in the ground. There, nurtured by vast technology, they placed the various collected samples they had gathered through the ages, a mix of animal and plant life from Earth, Lemuria, Amira, Chimera, and Ing. At a measured pace, animals came forth from the station, these grand animaliums, as the sisters call them. Plant life was seated in the wind. Life spread out and filled the empty spaces of Cana. Aram jumped in. The elders didn't want to share this technology, so they guarded these grand animaliums. How many of these facilities are there? Gwendolyn asked. 7, Aram said. There's one deep underneath the sister stronghold of Valenhelm to the north. Another is suspected to be located near the hazards of the Old Ones in the Tartan lands. One in Esther, 2 in the foothills of Remnath, 1 in the Great Armenelos Forest, and the final one is at Magravine, at the bottom of the chasm. Gwendolyn was unconvinced. Not possible. The scholarly studies would have uncovered such an oddity. These animaliums are elder tech of a potent kind and veiled in secrecy. They are keyed right into your senses and your gifts as well. You could be looking right at one and not see it. You could be standing in one and never know it, Aram said. Illusions can be defeated, Gwen said. Aram disagreed. It's not an illusion. It's a matter of altered perception that cuts deep. Stenstrom closed his eyes and felt tired. So what's to be done, then? Alesta continued. There is a bit of hope. You're familiar with Blanchford Village, correct? Certainly. I've been there many times. There is a small college there. Do you know it? Stenstrom opened his eyes. Sarfortnum College, just a little place. My friend Lieutenant Kylos is a big fan of the college's Brant ball team, the 40s they're called. Aram clapped his hands. Oh, I love Brant ball. The St. Edmunds Tarpoons are my team, the old greenbacks. Brant ball is in my blood. St. Edmunds rules, unlike bowling that I'm not too keen on. Alesta took immediate exception. Well, Rammy, I thought you liked to bowl. Oh, Bear, I like to watch you bowl, you know that, but when you're not around, I really don't like bowling. She glared at him and Gwendolyn laughed. Alesta gave Aram a dubious stare. Well, we'll discuss this further later. Meanwhile, back to the topic at hand. At Sarfortnum College, there's an odd set of artifacts in their displayed collection. They're not much to look at, basically a set of rough-hewn stone helmets going back to the early EX days, making them approximately 90,000 years old. They're relics from the old temple at Magravine, one of the few items to survive the Vith attack. They're considered interesting, if unremarkable, museum pieces. What's not commonly known is that these 2 helmets contain elder tech. When wearing these helmets, many defenses exhibited by the grand animaliums are rendered ineffective. You'll then be able to see what is really at the bottom of the chasm of Magravine. There, you will find the location of Lost Ing. Stenstrom shook his head. So let me make sure I've properly absorbed all of this. We are to go to Sarfortnum College, borrow a set of elder artifacts, go to Magravine Chasm and determine the long-lost location of Ing, and then go to Ing and finish turning the dial of the anatometer. Have I got that? You have, Belle, Alesta answered. And don't think we've seen the last of Professor Hannah-Ben Shurlamp. If she overheard us talking in the conference room and she believes the stellar location of Ing is to be had, then you can bet she won't give up until that information is hers, by means fair or foul. After that, they sat there in their prospective couches before the crackling fire in Alesta's room, no one saying anything. And with that, we conclude Part 2, Chapter 3, Hannah-Ben Shurlamp. So, a lot of stuff discussed in this chapter. As I mentioned, a lot of old lore, a lot of old places that make up the vast universe of the League of Elder. For one thing, they talk about Magravine and the Grand Abbess of Magravine. And who was the Grand Abbess? She was a Grand Abbess of the Sisterhood a long time ago, still in the EX time epoch, before the Great Betrayal, several thousands of years before. She was considered one of the more studious Grand Abbesses. They're all pretty powerful, and she was one of them. The Grand Abbess of Magravine made a study of shadow tech, this new thing that had been discovered by the Vith hero, Subra of the Mark, who could control this weird substance that she cried out as tears. And the Grand Abbess was fascinated by this substance, found it was incredibly powerful and versatile and was woven into the fabric of the universe itself. As she continued her studies, she became obsessed with this substance, this shadow tech as she called it, and she started experimenting on bloodlines and girls who could create shadow tech and started doing horrible things to them. She went from being a pretty decent person, a sister of note, to a raging mad fiend, and she became the Black Abbess, the head of the Black Hat Sisterhood. And in the early books of the League of Elder, she was sort of like the devil, a very demonic, satanic presence. And when she showed up, and she only showed up once or twice, I think, I kind of lost interest in her as a character, but whenever she showed up, it was always very satanic in nature and in description, and the power that she possessed, and was completely immortal, completely mad as well. In the early days before the Black Hats, as the Black Abbess, the Grand Abbess of Magravine, her atrocities became known. The Vith, along with the sisters, came in force to attack her, so she would stop hurting all these people, killing all these shadow tech girls. They came in force, and they attacked her temple at Magravine and razed it to the ground, leaving a huge crack in the earth. So that, according to the information that they have, that's where their destination is the crack or the chasm at Magravine, the remains of the Black Abbess's temple. And hidden at the bottom of this chasm is a grand animalium. So Cana, when the League first arrived in the EX time epoch, found Cana to be a very bountiful world, which was oddly barren of life. It didn't have much. It had the Monomoh peoples to the south, and that was about it. The elders, whom the League served, had collected samples of flora and fauna from the various worlds that they had encountered, and Earth is one of them. So that's why there are familiar animals roaming around on Cana, is because the elders had samples of DNA from Earth plants, Earth animals, Emiras, plants and animals, Lemurias, Ings, Cameras, and they put them into these hidden facilities and called the Grand Animaliums, and these facilities would release this DNA into the atmosphere and float on the wind, and they would gestate various types of animals. So animals and plants would come out of these various places. There's 7 of them, and if you've read book 2 of the League of Elder, The Hazards of the Old Ones, they talk about the hazards as a very cursed place, and all these weird animals are always like emanating from it, and that's why, because there's one of these facilities. They are hidden with elder tech, so you can't really perceive one just by looking at it or by standing in it. You would never know you were looking at one or standing in it. It's just, you just can't perceive it. The elders built that into them. So that is their next destination. Go to the chasm of Magravine, go to the bottom, find the Grand Animalium, and there is the location of Ing. And in order to do this, there are Vith artifacts that came from Magravine before it was destroyed, a pair of helmets. If you wear it, you put it on, you can see the Grand Animalium. So that is where they are going next. See how this fun stuff starts to link together. Like I said, I love ancient places, legendary places, get updates on these places, talk about them, think about them, and that's woven a lot into this story. Once again, I thank my good friend Cas Peace, writer of the Artisans of Albia, the Circle of Conspiracy, the Masters of Malice series, the Dragon Eaters, the Skirmishers, and a nonfiction from Cas, For the Love of the Daisy. I'll put links below. You can check them out. I highly recommend you do. I love Cas Peace's work. Always fun, always inventive, always well-paced. Great fantasy fare. If that is your genre of choice, then Cas Peace is a must-read. Next week, we continue with this crazy quest. We now know where we need to go to the crack of Magravine, find the coordinates to Ing. First, we have to stop off at Sarfortnum College and get our hands on these Vith artifacts, these 2 helmets, see what's there. And that is our next chapter, Part 2, Chapter 4, Sarfortnum College. It should be fun. I can't wait. Until then, this is Ren Presents. I'm your host, Ren. Peace out.